Hello and welcome back to On Air Airline Manager, everybody. And today I'm going to run through a bunch of tips that are useful for beginners to the game. So if you've just joined On Air, hopefully these will help you out. I must say I can't take much credit at all for these tips. I want to thank all the people in my comments section from my last video who suggested a few tips, which will be very, very helpful. And also the great forum and manual that's available for the game certainly will help out new players too. So this isn't a comprehensive tutorial or anything like that. It's just basically a quick fire bunch of tips that will hopefully help you get started. So also a quick reminder to go ahead and smash that like button down below. It really helps out the channel with the YouTube algorithm. And also, if you are new, consider subscribing. It costs nothing at all, except just a little bit of self-respect. And who's not willing to give up some of that, let's be honest. Okay, here we are on the lobby screen, which you'll be presented with when you first log into the game. And the first tip right here, I haven't done this yet for the current company that I've got. I will do it later on. And that's run through the tutorial. If you run through the tutorial down the bottom right hand corner here, you're going to get 7,500 credits, just like that. And you also are going to get your very own single piston aircraft, Cessna 172 I believe, to put into your fleet, which is obviously going to save you on some rental costs early on. So make sure you go ahead and do that. One, you get those great little bonuses right there. But number two, it's going to walk you through how to do all the basics within the game. So highly recommend going and doing that. You will need to do a quick flight and stuff like that, but that's the best way to learn to actually go through all the steps. So that's the first tip right there. Okay, I'm now in the general settings here, which is an options global settings, I should say, not general. And there's a bunch of little options right here that are important to know. The first one here is a company UTC offset. So this is something that I went through on my last video. I actually got caught out a little bit with this. And that's that if it's set to 0, it means you're just following UTC time. So for example, over here in New Zealand, we're plus 12. So if I was doing my flight at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but it actually set the time in the simulator to 3 o'clock in the morning. So if you don't want to fly at night, go ahead and set some offset time there. So now I've got it set to 8 hours. So if I'm flying at 8 o'clock at night, for example, it's only going to be 6 o'clock in the morning in the sim. So it just means I'm going to fly during the day if I want to. So that's one thing to know about. The other thing right here is use small airports. I've got that unchecked at the moment, but if you do check that, then it's going to use every little small airport in the game. But as you might already know, some simulators don't actually have a bunch of little small airports in the simulator. So to avoid getting jobs to airports that perhaps don't exist in your simulators, leave that one unchecked. Now, the other options you have right here are basically the difficulty options. Now, if you're not in survival mode, you can basically set these to whatever you like. You can give yourself more pay. So if you want to make things a little bit easier there, you can instantly transport yourself or employees around the map rather than have to wait for them to be transported via public transport or via another flight. You can instantly load your cargo, so you can make everything really, really quick. Also the skill tree, so there's a bunch of different skills that you can unlock to make life easier. If you press that means every skill will be unlocked, and so you'll have access to that straight away. Disable employees rest. Well, here's the thing. If you hire employees, then they actually need to rest. So they can actually do 14-hour days, but only 9 of those 14 hours can be actually flying. So that's just something to take account of, be aware of. And then they've got to have 8 hours of rest. And this is another tip. Try to rest them at your home base, because then you won't be paying hotel fees. So if you can set up flights that mean that your employees rest in the home base, you save a bit of money. So that's just one thing to think about too. You also got don't force time and sim and disable landing penalties. If you want to do those, you can do those too. Another option right here is pausing your company. So if you need to go away for a while, you're not going to be able to get in and play the game. You can pause your company. It means that your loans won't come out, your ownership fees and all that sort of stuff won't continue to tick down. So if you're out of the game for a month, you're not going to come back to a huge big debt or something like that. So that's just something you can do there. and that way, like I said, you're not going to come back to a mountain of debt. And of course, you can go ahead and restart your company. So there are a heap of options right here that are going to help you within the game. Okay, I'm in the aircraft part of the sim right here, or the game right here, and I don't own an aircraft because I haven't done that tutorial yet. But when I do, I'll obviously have my own aircraft. But I have rented the Cessna 172. And one thing to think about when you rent is that try to return them to the airport that you rented it from, and have at least the amount of fuel that was in the aircraft when you rented it, and that way you won't incur a whole bunch of fees. And I'll just quickly show you what those fees look like. So if we look in our expenses right here on our P&L, you can see right here that I rented an aircraft. There's a renting fee, and I actually needed to pay for fuel to get it back, and the pilot wages to fly it back to its home base, and the paperwork. So it cost me an extra 500 credits for them to fly it back to to its home base. So that's something that I could have avoided if I had flown it back. Now, I didn't have any jobs to fly it right back to its home base, but what I could have done, and here's another tip, is if you're going to fly it somewhere, try to have at least a job in there. If you're flying it empty, it's costing you money. Okay, if we also look at aircraft details right here, you can see the condition of the airframe and a few other things. Now, one thing to know is that once the condition of the aircraft goes below 50%, you have to repair it before you can fly it again. So a tip is that if you own an aircraft, go ahead and repair it relatively often and maintain it, particularly if you're not going to fly for a few days or something. That's a good time to get that maintenance done, and that way you're not going to get the aircraft, I should say, into a really bad state of disrepair. Also on this details page right here, you can see the type of fees that you're going to be up for. So you've got a weekly ownership cost, 100 hours checkup cost once you get to that, annual checkup, engine price, all that sort of stuff, airframe time. So here's all the different information that you need right here. You've got to keep on top of it. Make sure you've got enough money in your bank to deal with it. What I'll do is I'll just drag the manual across here, everybody, because since I don't own an aircraft, I can't talk about this. But if you own an aircraft, you can actually go ahead and change the configuration of the seats. So you can change the economy, business, and first class. This is particularly important once you get up into those into the 747s, 737s, whatever it might be. One thing you can also do is if you intend to mainly just fly cargo flights and not passenger flights, you can actually remove a whole lot of seats, and that's going to open up space to have more cargo in your plane. So that's something to think about also. Okay, let's quickly just talk about jobs for a second. And one thing you need to know is that you do not earn XP, which will help you unlock the skill tree, etc., and put your level up. You will not earn XP for flights that are done by AI pilots. So unless you fly it yourself, you're not going to get XP. Now, there are the odd flight that doesn't apply, but on the whole, unless you physically fly that flight yourself, then you're not going to get XP. And while we're talking about flying flights, just be aware that you can use accelerated time. So you can jump in your aircraft, get to cruise altitude, for example, and then accelerate the time and then land in normal time. Not unless you're really keen and you want to land in accelerated time. Good luck with that. But anyway, you do that. But what will actually happen is you'll go into what they call warp mode. So essentially what you'll need to do is wait for the program to catch up to you in real time. So you might save half an hour by getting to the destination because you don't have time in front of your computer. But everything will go into warp mode for that extra half hour until the real time catches up with the accelerated time, if that makes sense. So you'll be able to action until then. Another thing to think about is that, say you're flying a flight and the simulator crashes or whatever, then you don't have time to get back to it. You've got another 2 days to get that flight done from the time that you get a disconnection. And if you don't get it done within that, then the aircraft, everything gets returned back to its original place. So just be aware that you do have a little bit of time to get a flight done if it does crash. Okay, let's talk about home bases and FBOs. So essentially, one thing to be aware of is the opening hours of an airport, or the operating hours. You can see up around here, hopefully you can see that, 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. So The best thing is to operate between those operating hours. If you don't, then you're going to get a penalty if you land in here, or land or take off outside those hours. Now, it is only 200 credits, which might not seem a lot, but if you do a heap of them, then it can add up after a while. So that's something to think about. Now, if you find that you're flying a lot out of one particular location, then you have the option of setting up an FBO, or a fixed base operation. Now, what that allows you to do is basically set up a bunch of different services at the airport to make your life a lot easier. So let's go ahead and do that here. So what you want to do is go to the top right hand corner, create an FBO. You might find that a whole lot of other players have an FBO there. That's fine. There can be multiple FBOs at the same airport, so that's cool. So you go ahead and create an FBO, and now this does require some cash in the bank, so to speak, to be able to set this up. So you can name it up the top there. Let me just talk about the benefits of some of these. So what you actually do at this point here is just tell it, okay, how much cargo do you want to put in the hangar? Now, having the ability to store a certain amount of cargo in the hangar overnight can be quite helpful. It means you save on storage fees, so you might want to make that as whatever. You just figure out, but depending on the aircraft that you fly, how much pounds of cargo you want to hold. 100 LL fuel tanks, so you can store fuel. Now, fuel's pretty important. You buy it at wholesale cost, so you can either use it to fuel up your own aircraft, or you can go ahead over here, set the price, and sell it to other players. So if another player came in here and needed to refill the aircraft with 100 LL, then boom, there you go, you set the price. Just make sure it's enough to cover the cost, obviously, with a bit of profit. And away you go, there's a nice little money maker right there. The same for jet fuel. Set it to 1,000, whatever you want. You need to figure out these numbers. Crew rooms. Now, crew rooms are very helpful. These basically mean that your employees can rest for free, so no hotel costs. So you can set up some crew rooms. I think you can have a maximum of 50 from memory, something like that. Aircraft tie downs. So this allows you to store your aircraft overnight, or basically park at an airport for free is probably the best way to say, because it might not necessarily be overnight. And the same with hangars. So you could have a number of places for your aircraft. You can store them there or park them there, and it means you're not going to get stung with fees. Now, later on, you might also decide to set up a maintenance workshop. And that will allow you to obviously repair your aircraft, and it also means that you might allow other players to repair their aircraft too. So that's just one thing to take into account. So what you do is, for an FBO, you select everything you want, say get a quotation, and then it's going to give you a quote to set up the FBO in line with what you've requested. So as you can see, quite a bit of cash here, 56,800 credits. So depending on the difficulty level, if you're on survival mode, you might not have that for a start. But if you're on one of the easier modes, you'll find you can accumulate cash pretty quickly. So you should be able to set this up. So this will certainly make your life easier if you're flying in and out of the same airport a lot. And it tells you here how long in real time it's going to take to set up those particular features and things. So you'd press accept and away you go. I won't do it. I need to think about what I'm going to do there. So there you go right there. That's how to do FBOs. Really, really helpful. Okay, there we go, everybody. There goes a bunch of quick fire tips to help you get started in On Air Airline Manager. Now, I will produce a number of videos in the coming weeks that will go into a bit more detail on specific things, so watch out for those. Also, as I mentioned, look down the bottom of the lobby right here. You've got a website that you can go to. There's great documentation. It's an excellent PDF that you can search through, really good. You can go on the forum and ask your questions. It's got tips and tricks in there, an expanded list of what I've talked about right here. And also, for those of you that use Discord, you can get on there, have a good chat to somebody who knows what they're talking about, and they're sure to be able to point you in the right direction. Now, there's probably a whole lot more extra little tips and tricks that will help you get a leg up in the game. So as time goes by, I can share those with you. But hopefully you got something out of this. Thank you very much for watching. Make sure you smash that like button, subscribe if you are new, and until next time, everybody, take it easy.